Hi there, Virgo Sun and Rising. Welcome to your June 2023 Astro Update. It's Raina here. So, we've come off of the eclipse cycle in April and May, and the areas that have been impacted for your sign. In April, you had a solar eclipse in Aries, and that was in the eighth house. And then you had a lunar eclipse in Scorpio, and that one was in the third house. And the most recent one was the one in the third house may have had a psychological impact from the standpoint of the third house in part being the house of the mind and ruled in astrology by your ruler Mercury under the sign of Gemini. So you, in a sense, you might have a bit of an affinity for this house in general because of the function of this area. And what, it's very common, I think, for people who are Virgos to, or have like a prominent Virgo, to feel an attraction for teaching. And actually, your midheaven is in Virgo, or in, Gemini. So that is an area that you probably kind of get attracted to. But sometimes, especially I would say if you grew up in a certain time, like for instance, I went to elementary school in the 70s and I always wanted to be a teacher based on my experiences. And I, went back to school, and I have the moon in Virgo, and I went back to school in my 30s. And by the time I was ready to, student teach and things like that, I had to come to the realization that teaching had changed. That and I'm, this was the public schools. And so sometimes you change course. You've had Mars in that 10th house, and that may have also impacted things for you in some way. And it could have been letting go of this desire or this actual type of work that you're doing with a lunar eclipse, but it could simply be like a spiritual download that kind of, makes you realize the truth of your life as a whole. So that was in May. Now that we're in June, we're still going to have a full month of transits. And this begins on the 3rd of the month with a full moon at 13 degrees of Sagittarius. Sag is a fellow mutable sign, Virgo, and the ruler of your 4th house of home and family. And therefore, there could be some developments here. And by the way, I mean, it could be connected to your mother or to childhood itself. But the family that if you have created a family now, then it could certainly be that instead. And this could be physical property like the home that you're currently living in. A full moon can be an ending or kind of this crisis point. So if you have been kind of on the fence of whether or not you want to move, there might be an event that says, okay, I'm done. But it might even be something almost like a manifestation of a new home. Even though this is a full moon that we think of more as endings, I can honestly say that if this is the outcome, in other words, of something else that you put into motion, then it could be getting, moving into a new place. Sometimes this can involve childhood realizations, and that can be great because the person can see what is really going on and they're able to detach with love. If it involves family members now, they can see how all of that played out, and they're able to make peace with the past, but at least to understand the past. On the 5th, Venus goes into Leo, and this is your 12th house. And Mars is already there. So this this could be some kind of an affair that turns into something more of love, but if it is, you're probably keeping it very hidden from others, because the 12th house can be that way. It's possible that you will debut this relationship around the new moon in Leo happening on August 16th, but for the next couple of months, you might be more on the down low with that. If you're an artist, you may be working on some kind of project, but you don't necessarily want to share it with others for whatever reason. On the 11th, Pluto goes back into Capricorn and Mercury goes into Gemini. So Mercury is going into that 10th house of career, and Pluto is going back into your 5th house, which is the house of love and creativity. And it's important to note too, because when we have the Venus retrograde in July, and you have Pluto in that 5th house in retrograde, you may hear from a past lover. And hopefully you are not just automatically going to do whatever that person wants, because if they are some sort of malignant narcissist, they may be trying to control you again. And I'm assuming they did the first time. But if you experience some kind of a controlling lover in the past 15 years or so when Pluto's in the 5th house, this retrograde is more about your personal power and looking at how you gave that away. Typically with Virgo people, it is that desire to help others that gets them in trouble, because if there's nothing wrong with helping people, but if you are attracted to a potential partner, and you get it mixed up with love, and you can clearly see that that person has some kind of issue going on, then it's like a new project for you. And if you make partners into projects, and that's who you find yourself attracted to, then you're going to discover that that person is connected to a lot of problems, and you don't want that in your life. We want to be able to help others without being consumed by their problems. And so anyway, you may rediscover your personal power as it pertains to these issues. Also, creativity. If you've experienced any blockages, then perhaps it's because you have not allowed yourself to let go and just experience maybe being imperfect. When I think of Virgo, I think of the perfectionist. And in terms of creative endeavors, that can be quite difficult, because the person may find it hard to create because they're always judging what their output is, and it becomes very limiting, self-limiting. But in problematic relationships, seeing how you give away your power, seeing, what your place is in all of this. Okay. So, yeah, so Mercury in the 10th house simply means you could be talking to people in positions of authority. Maybe you're trying to find work, or you're negotiating for a raise, or um, whatchamacallit, a better sense of your life. That's one way to look at it. So then on the 17th, we have Saturn turning retrograde at 7 degrees of Pisces. And this is the 7th house of committed partnership for you. So in that 7th house, Neptune has been for over a decade, and Saturn is now going into that first house. And it can be a very intense time, because Saturn tends to not like excess. If somebody is having a rocky marriage or a serious relationship, Saturn might be there to, get rid of the dead wood. And the person may be stripped bare. But in some cases, with that other person, they may find that there need to be boundaries in the relationship. Maybe there weren't enough ways that the two of you, but especially since this is your particular chart, so I'll say for you specifically, that you were accepting things that you shouldn't have, simply because you were working at home. And, well, I mean, working at home, if the other person is working home too, could definitely put a strain on the relationship. But just by virtue of not getting along for some reason, there have been, certain stressors to this area. Well, I don't know, because Jupiter was there. That's not stressful. But I would just say Saturn in and of itself can be problematic in that sense, because it isn't it's not looking to be generous. It's looking to be like a boot camp drill sergeant kind of a vibe, where it's like no excuses, no excess, having to decide whether or not a relationship is viable. So, you've also had Neptune in this house, which can lend itself to feeling confused about your commitments. Maybe even if somebody has gotten legally married, they may feel like something is not on the up and up. Sometimes when Neptune is transiting through the 7th house, you might have a situation of downright deception, where your spouse misrepresented themselves, maybe living a double life and having another relationship at the same time. Who knows? But the bottom line is that regardless of what is going on with all of that, Neptune is very idealistic and looking for the soulmate. Saturn is kind of like not so fast. We have to see if this person is soulmate material. Well, now Saturn is retrograding, and it's more about disciplining yourself. Sometimes this is a big one, and I'll give you an example. If you're with somebody who's an alcoholic, let's say, and it's so easy to focus on the alcoholic's bad behavior, their addiction. The whole idea of these support groups for the friends and family of alcoholics called Al-Anon is because there is that social component to it, and that helps people to stay accountable, I think. But also, I really think it's more likely that they get a lot of inspiration and ideas from other people. I think that's the ultimate reason for a support group, not really just to hold each other accountable on what they're doing. But it can give strategies on how to deal with, people in our lives on an intimate level, those relationships, those one-on-one relationships that can feel sometimes very oppressive because of the behavior of the other person. And it brings it back to ourselves. So Saturn retrograde can be, okay, what is inside of me that needs to become disciplined in this situation? And, don't get it wrong. Saturn transiting this house, or if you have it natally here, could be just in general where you are very disciplined in terms of certain things in your life. And for Virgo, this is something that it's very easy for you to do in terms of, your daily routine, which you rule that sixth house, which is work and daily routine. But we're talking about the seventh house. And this may be the area that you get tripped up in when it comes to relationships. It may be more hard for you to navigate. You may not know exactly how to go about doing it effectively. And so it's like, okay, where do I say yes when I mean no? What kind of things do I tolerate without even, communicating that I'm not happy with the situation? The next day, on the 18th, we have a new moon at 26 degrees of Gemini. And then there again, we have that falling in the 10th house of career. So this is a good month for career advancement or some kind of new developments for you, Virgo. Remember that you had Mars here for 7 months, from August of 2022 to March of 2023. So you may have really planted those seeds, and some of them could have been rather contentious with Mars. Mars is very kind of, what would you call it? Very drama filled or conflict filled sometimes. And on the 21st, we have the summer solstice, a power period in our year. And this is occurring at 9:57 a.m. Central Standard Time. And the sun goes into a cardinal sign, in this case, Cancer. Cancer is a friendly angle to you, Virgo. Cancer is the 11th house, which is the house of the collective, the house of friendships and groups. In other words, well, that's not synonymous. The collective is everybody, not even people that even your enemies would be part of that. And so you may be reaching out more socially in the last week or so, 10 days of the month. Because then on the 26th, you have Mercury here. You've had Venus and Mars here already, but you're going to have Mercury here. And so this can make you, perhaps, if you have been keeping more to yourself for whatever reason, maybe you've been working a lot. This may see you calling your friends and, kind of catching up with them. On the 30th, Neptune goes retrograde. Again, this is the house of Pisces, which is the 7th house. So there could be a reality check and maybe even a disappointment when it comes to your relationship. Some of you are not in relationships, though. But for those who are, you may get some kind of news or there's some experience that you have that seriously makes you rethink your rosy ideas of your significant other. Maybe it's something that happens that makes you see and not be able to deny something that's going on, if it is connected with deception. Or if you're not even committed to this person, but you were planning on getting committed. This is important though, because, Saturn is retrograde here, and Saturn will go direct in November. And I'm assuming that Neptune will around the same time as well. Saturn is about the long haul. Saturn isn't frivolous, impetuous, doing things on the spur of the moment. Saturn is about permanency, and so this is a time to really not worry so much about being disillusioned if that does occur, but to really absorb the information that you're being given. Because with Neptune, when Neptune is direct, Neptune can have you saying, la, 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 I can't hear you. I'm in this little bubble, this cozy little bubble that is, my rose-colored bubble. And that could be something problematic. One thing I will say about Neptune in the 7th house, you could marry your soulmate or live with your soulmate. Find a person that is worthy of that. It just may be that you can't expect perfection in the relationship, that there are going to be speed bumps. And if you're the kind of person who throws in the towel the first time that somebody shows their imperfections, especially if a Virgo has Venus in Virgo, you may be very persnickety about who is good enough for you to be with. And you may be very overly critical because of your own insecurities, but you might never admit that to yourself, that it's also about your issues. But anyway, that's what's happening. And I think that this is particularly good for career matters. This period in June, especially with that new moon and in your 10th house. And that's what I have for you, Virgo. If you would like a personal reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.